Hi there, and welcome along to episode 158 of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the totally free and independent Rangers podcast made by fans for fans, where all of our content is absolutely free. And that free content doesn't just end with the podcast here, but if you head over to our website at www.gersnet.co.uk, you can also find a great host of information there, including the very friendly discussion forum, plenty of articles, match previews and reviews, a really informative history archive, as well as Frankie's social media. So please do head over to the website and check that out. We are, of course, going live. It's just on 9:30 p.m. on the 14th of November. If you're joining us live tonight, then thank you so much for giving up your Sunday evenings. Please do let us know your thoughts, your comments, your questions in the YouTube stream there. There's quite a lot to get through today in what's been an absolutely bizarre week for Rangers fans, and something that we've not had to deal with for quite a number of years now. So plenty to talk about, and please do let us know your thoughts. If you're not with us live tonight, remember that the podcast does always go out first thing on a Monday, and that's wherever you get your podcasts from, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, and also on Spotify. As I say, a really bizarre, surreal, and tough week, I think, for the Rangers family, with the departure of Steven Gerrard. I've got two fantastic guests to help us try and make sense of what's happened this weekend and where we go from here. First of all, a very, very warm welcome back to Alec Anderson. Alec, how have you found this week?
Yeah, bizarre. I thought you missed an easy link there, Ross, with it's been a bizarre week and we've got a bizarre guest here. That's your usual patter. No, I mean, it's been very weird through the 5 stages of grief. I think I'm kind of at the acceptance point now, but there's still a lot of denial and a lot of rage, and most of that coming from the fact that this time last week I was guffawing, scoffing on this very podcast at the prospect of Steven Gerrard going to a club like Aston Villa. No way. Yeah. It'll be Anfield or nobody. So just looking forward to making a complete fool of myself again tonight, mate.
Absolutely, that's a regular feature here on the Gersnet podcast. Yeah. Also with us tonight, David Fraser. David, what are your immediate thoughts after what's been a really turbulent week?
Contrary to popular belief, Ross, I'm fairly relaxed about the whole thing. I actually see it as an opportunity to move forward in a playing sense. So I'm sure we'll get into it later on in the show. But I think he was going to move on at some point. So it's happened. We just need to deal with it, and how we go forward is the most important thing, rather than how he's left and what have you. So I'm sure we'll get to it.
We certainly shall. And I think in terms of moving on and taking that next step, the club certainly don't seem to be resting on their laurels. They do seem to be making strides as quickly as they possibly can, which is the right thing to do given the couple of weeks that we've got ahead. Alec, we'll start with yourself. Obviously, this is the week that Steven Gerrard left us after 3.5 years. The man who delivered 55, the man who restored professionalism to Glasgow Rangers after the most difficult period of our history. The rebuilding through the leagues was complete, but restoring Rangers to their sort of rightful place at the top of Scottish football, being a force in Europe, that was done by Mr. Gerrard. And that's now, obviously, that chapter is closed. Another chapter will open very, very shortly. There will come a time, I think, in the not too distant future where we'll have had sufficient breathing room to be able to look back on Gerrard's 3.5 years and really evaluate the performances and the success that he brought. But what was your kind of immediate reaction to the news that he had left and that he was no longer the Rangers manager?
Yeah, as David's saying quite sensibly, there was that feeling of we should have seen this coming. For me, it was I should have seen this coming. I think I'd kind of double bluffed myself, if you like, with it. I was kind of wearing it like a badge from day one that I'm Mr. Maturity. I've been through the mill with Rangers, same as the rest of us. I know that Steven Gerrard is going to go to Liverpool, but that was what the problem was. I thought it'll be Liverpool. He's going to leave someday. The deal was that it was a tacit agreement from the word go. Steven Gerrard's coming to Rangers so he can eventually get back to Anfield, and in so doing, he'll give us what we need. And as you said there, Ross, he gave us exactly what he came to do. And yeah, he's moved on, but he's caught me out because if you love a football club, you get subjective. You can watch as much kind of junior football or continental football, whatever as you like, as I do. But when it's Rangers and you love Rangers, you get sucked in, and you can't help having that wee thing of why would anybody want to leave us? Why would, it's there. And I thought, I just always envisioned if he was going to leave us mid-season, it will be for Liverpool only. But again, that's sickening of how desperate I was getting this week. I ended up, was it Karl Popper, the poverty of historicism? I was looking at old philosophers and that, this idea that you think you know from the past what's going to happen in the future, and you never do. You just can't work it out. And I'm looking at the whole kind of Graham Souness, the European Cup winning Liverpool captain. The comparison's been made a million times the last 3.5 years with Gerrard. So you're kind of thinking it might go the same way. But Graham Souness left us with weeks to go in a close title campaign. He actually left us more in the shitter than Gerrard has. These jobs, Premier League jobs in England, don't come up like in the middle of the summer, and there's no summer in football now anyway. It's not postal applications only and stuff like that. This is the way you get these jobs. You take them when they come up. They're always mid-season, and this is as close to a good time to leave as any. One of the things that's been coming to me this week is like David's kind of alluding to, if it was going to happen, if it happened, in the summer, it would have put a cloud over 55 straight away. It gave us a time to enjoy that. If it happens in January, well, that's not giving a new manager his own transfer window. That's really messing us up. It happens at the beginning of an international break, is at this time of the season is probably the best time. When it's given us the fortnight to get something sorted out, it's absolutely murder. But whether it hadn't happened, maybe. But if it had to happen sometime, I suppose this is the time for it to happen. And it's letting us also, I immediately started in that kind of hypocritical way, re-examining, revisiting all the things I've been saying this season that were just a sign of a team who were recovering from the high of last season. And Gerrard was just, he's now a title-winning manager, so he could take it easy. That's why we're kind of relaxed. That's why we're conceding the first goal, but still winning the games anyway. Still top of the league, going to hit form. Now you're thinking, no, it's because his heart wasn't in it anymore, and it was time to move on. So if that's what if that's what he wanted to do, then he's as well to do it now. And I think we just want to get it all sorted, apart from anything else, so we can finally just say, thank you, Steven Gerrard. It was absolutely lovely. We want to know that we're going to be okay within ourselves, so we can package up a nice kind of blue bow, the Steven Gerrard era, and just be thankful to him for putting one of the main kind of supports under us at a time that we're still rebuilding, really. But it's been really hard to deal with. Kind of emotionally in that kind of knee-jerk fan way, but I think, as David's been saying already, it'll make sense pretty soon.
That seems to be a very sort of mature way of looking at it, David. Whilst we haven't gone to the extreme reaction that Celtic fans had when Brendan Rodgers left Celtic, there has still been, a difficulty accepting this decision from large parts of the Rangers fan base. Whether that's his decision to leave mid-season, whether that's his decision to take the coaching staff with him, his decision to go, 2 weeks before a cup semi-final and the game against Sparta, or even the decision to go to a struggling club that's fighting relegation. Now, before we come on to look at what Rangers do next, could Gerrard have handled this situation any better?
It's difficult to say, Ross. I think the cold light of day, leaving aside your kind of affiliations, he was damned if he did, damned if he didn't, type of thing. There's no good time to lose your manager, whether it's in a close season or whether it's mid-season. I think that of all the public figures that had their say on it, I think Mr. McCoist maybe summed it up best. I think for a lot of supporters, I think the timing of his departure left a sour taste, coupled with his recent interviews as the Rangers manager. And by extension of that, his stature as a Ranger. And I think that's basically at the crux of the vast majority of supporters who feel personally slighted by his departure, if that's the right way to put it. I look at it slightly differently. I try to look at it from his perspective. If I'm Steven Gerrard, I see a sizable rebuild job on the horizon. We've got a number of players coming to the end of their Rangers careers. We've got a number of players out of contract. Obviously, the club has posted a £23.5 million loss there. prior to the speculation arising about Aston Villa being interested in securing his services, and even allowing to the fact that there's a sizable chunk, an £18 million chunk of that attributable to COVID. That's obviously going to have an impact on his budget, his playing budget going forward, and may also increase his reliance on having to sell before he can buy. So I think what he's done is he's looked into the future from a footballing perspective, purely footballing perspective. He's looked into the future and he's maybe went like that. You know what? It's maybe best to get out of Dodge while I've still got my reputation intact, because even for buy, leaving us in a position of relative strength. We're top of the league with 4 points. We're in a League Cup semi-final. We've effectively got a Europa League playoff coming up shortly. That is a relative position of strength, assuming that we get someone in and, there's a seat in the best intentions, a seamless transition, so to speak. Do I blame him for going in the way that he did? I take exception with his timing. I thought, given his age, he possibly could have seen it out to the end of the season and left in the eyes of the support with his reputation completely intact. I take what Alex said earlier there. He says, it might not have been a great time to leave either, especially, and he could have left on a high after 55, and we'd all have been sitting here thinking, what if, he'd win at the Champions League, blah, blah, blah. But obviously he didn't, and that's obviously had an impact on his thinking, I imagine. He's obviously got his family situation as well to think about. So there's a multitude of factors. But if you're putting me in the spot here and asking me what the body cult of the Rangers support think about him, I think that it's raw to a lot of people, and it's understandably raw. But I think, given time, I think people will see the wood for the trees and think that clubs who have the potential spending power that Aston Villa have got, that job might not necessarily come up, because you look at the English Premier League, the availability of jobs that would fit Steven Gerrard's idea of his platform, his stature, something that's commensurate with his standing in the game. There's not too many jobs would come up. I would say that possibly Leeds could maybe be the only other job out with Villa that would possibly satisfy his levels of ambition. I don't see him going to Newcastle. I think Newcastle's a bit too... It's a funny club, Newcastle, because they've always struggled to attract top-level talent. People might refute that and say, but they attracted Shearer, they attracted David Ginola, Tino Espria. That's all well and good. That was 25 years ago. I think latterly they've struggled to attract top players. Leeds is different, but Villa's different again. And I don't see him go to Arsenal, Chelsea. He's not going to go to either the Manchester clubs, and he's certainly not going to go to Everton. So, he was a bit hamstrung if he wanted to continue working in Britain. So, I think we've just got to go on with it. The big thing now is that Ross Wilson and the board get the decision right, and we can try and move forward with as little disruption as we can, whether that's adopting a similar playing style via the coach's philosophy or not remains to be seen.
Yeah, an interesting way of looking at it. Alec, we'll come on now to think about the next move for Rangers, and it's probably not unfair to say that our recent managerial appointments, with the exception of Steven Gerrard, have not been altogether successful. So this is a naturally nervy period. The interviews, it seems, that have clearly been ongoing this weekend for a replacement manager. We know that Giovanni van Bronckhorst was in London yesterday. We know that Stuart Robertson and Ross Wilson flew down to London from Glasgow. So it's pretty clear that Gio was being interviewed. The kind of word that's seeping out from the club is that there were other interviews, one more or multiple more interviews to come over the course of the weekend. But the names aren't being confirmed by anyone at this point. Let's start with Van Bronckhorst. He's the clear favourite in terms of the betting odds. He's the person that the club have kind of implicitly confirmed has been interviewed. It's been confirmed from his side as well, agents or what have you, that he has been interviewed over the course of the weekend. So definitely a front runner and seems to be pretty popular within the fan base. What would you make of that appointment for Rangers manager?
Yeah, I think cards on the table. We've got a WhatsApp group here with the boys on Gersnet. It maybe not be the same as the one Jordan Campbell was reporting in the Athletic amongst the Rangers first team, because obviously we're much cleverer when it comes to analysing our performances. But we were talking. I think Ian Duff, stalwart of this show, is kind of hot on the fact that, and I was agreeing with him, that I think a lot of the clamour for Van Bronckhorst that was kind of instantaneous. This kind of, I think it'd be a good appointment. I think it'd be a safe appointment. It's not a bad appointment, and he might turn out to be brilliant. But I think a lot of it was to do with not wanting to deal with the hurt of losing Gerrard. And while we're on the subject, how good is it? We've got to acknowledge the fact that it's actually good to be upset at losing a manager. This must be the first time in 10 years, a decade, that we've actually all been upset at losing a manager. We're usually, we've had, it seems like yesterday, Kenny McDowell was more or less held at gunpoint to be manager. In every interview, he was practically saying, "Get me out of here. I don't want to do this." We're holding him hostage. So now we've actually got a guy like, we're gutted to leave him. And we've got the guy that we're bringing in. The problem isn't revolutionising things. It's keeping it going. We've got a successful dressing room. We've got a successful team. And that's, we've got to acknowledge things like that. We've come such a long way. But I think a lot of the clamour was because we just want to, it's that kind of thing. It's a knee-jerk response to the slagging we're getting on social media from Celtic fans, various Rangers haters in the press and whatever, who were telling us Gerrard was a mistake when he arrived, but somehow seem to be delighted that he's left. It doesn't really scan. There's a lot of that been going on. And I think there's a kind of reaction to that. And it reminded me in a strange way of the, nowhere near as bad, obviously, but it was a kind of scaled down version of back in the days when Craig White was hailed as a hero when he arrived, and then Charles Green was hailed as a hero. It was just, it's okay to be uptight. It's okay to be worried. We can just treat these things soberly. We don't have to get right behind everything, from the word go. Just, but to me, yeah, I think Gio, we're in the same situation again, really. One of the Sky interviews with him from years ago that was replayed last week was him saying that he wants to manage all the clubs he played for. He started at Feyenoord, came to Rangers as a player, then he went to Arsenal, then he went to Barcelona. So he's managed Feyenoord, now he wants to come to Rangers, so he's using us to get to Arsenal, and on to Barca. And again, we're in that situation where that's absolutely fine by us, as long as he does the job. The thing for me, Ross, the thing that I can't help, maybe this is just my particular hang-up. There's been a lot of hang-ups this week. A lot of kind of strange reactions going on in the brain around this because it's such a kind of emotional roller coaster. But I just get fixated on the squad that we have now. I've been listening to Michael Beale for 3.5 years, who is by all accounts a tactical genius. Tom Culshaw is no slouch either. We've got a fantastic backroom team that has just disappeared, and I think whoever comes in, it's not a case of the old way that guys my age would think of a manager needing to go in there and just show the dressing room who's boss. They're actually going to show the dressing room who's the brainiest. They're going to have, these players will only respect somebody who knows what they're doing tactically. A new manager could get laughed out the dressing room if he doesn't actually know what he's doing in a tactical sense. We don't, again, the comparison with Celtic bringing in Neil Lennon. After Rodgers, it took a season, but eventually he was laughed out his own dressing room to all intents and purposes. So Van Bronckhorst, in many senses, better than Gerrard, because he's actually arrived with having won a Dutch league, a much better league. Gerrard just came from youth football really as a coach, and in terms of his reputation as a player, won a Champions League final, same as Steven Gerrard. Didn't, run that Champions League final the way Gerrard did, not as famous for it, but he's also, his last competitive game was as captain of his country in a World Cup final. And when he came off the park, by the way, it was 0-0. It was only when a Celtic player came on to replace him that Spain won that, beat the Netherlands in that final. But he'll get the respect for his playing career. He'll get the respect from the dressing room in that sense. But whoever we bring in, I am fixated on them being technically at the top of their game, because my first reaction last week in the denial phase of grief, perhaps, or the negotiating with reality, I wanted Michael Beale to stay. I think a lot of us did. There was an idea that Michael Beale, having been offered a job at Cardiff, might stay on and become a manager, and I think that would actually have felt like again, that's a historicism thing. You're thinking of Walter Smith taking over from Souness. It would have felt like a smooth transition. And the guy who a lot of ex-players, a lot like Halliday and Lafferty have been in the media since they left Rangers under Gerrard, saying that with all due respect, Michael Beale was the man who was coaching them. Gerrard was just the kind of, obviously, the enforcer and the inspiration, more than that, he'd be technically adept as well, but it was Beale. So I think we just need somebody who, so obvious to say, but really knows what they're doing. Need somebody who can win over a first team, a group of players who may be disenfranchised. We'll find out. Will no doubt come out in dribs and drabs what's happened between, if there's been any kind of distance come this season between them and Gerrard, them and the coaching team. They may be completely gutted because there's a bit of a cult of personality with Steven Gerrard, which we all bought into as well. They may be thinking to themselves, we will never trust again, so to speak, But I think a big part of it is, and Ross Wilson will have this down as well, these guys, whoever comes in needs to win the respect of that dressing room.
Yeah, absolutely. Some interesting points that I just want to pick up there, Alec. He's had success, Gio, as a manager in a more competitive league, and the circumstances with the team Feyenoord, in terms of where they had been, having not won a title for 18 years, the discrepancy in wage bill and budgets compared to the giants of Ajax and PSV, the downturn that club have subsequently had since Gio moved away, are all interesting points. David, how about yourself, staying with Van Bronckhorst? As we say, someone who has played at literally the very highest level, getting his country to a World Cup final, over 100 caps for a spectacular footballing country, won leagues, found success in Europe and played for some magnificent clubs. How does that sound to you?
On the surface, it sounds okay. I'm fairly relaxed with trusting the board to get it right. Gio's obviously got advantage over, I would imagine, most candidates insofar as he's already played for the club. He knows what it takes to be a success at Rangers, even though his recent experience of the league is obviously well out of date. To go back to what Alec was saying there with regards to someone to hit the ground running in terms of dressing room respect. I look at the playing style, Ross. Latterly, certainly this season, I felt that Rangers were playing more and more like a Dutch side. That may well be by accident as opposed to be by design. So I hope, and I hope I'm not wrong in saying this, that the transition will be fairly smooth, assuming that it is Gio that comes in. Now, I don't know who the backroom staff is. I know there's talk that a stipulation of him being offered the job will be that a Scottish person with direct recent Scottish experience is part of the coaching team. I don't know whether that's part of succession planning or just as a help to him to bridge the gap between him leaving Rangers in 2001 and obviously 20 years later taking up the managerial reins. So, by all accounts, I'll be honest, I don't know a heck of a lot about his time at Feyenoord, other than the fact that they spanked Ajax 6-2. He's obviously won the league, he's won 2 cups with them, but that was 5 years ago, Ross. That's football moves on. And 5 years, 3 years is a long time in football with Stevie's duration. 5 years is even longer. It's almost double the time that Steve, well, it's not really, but it's, you know where I'm coming from. It's a significant period of time over and above what Gerrard's, the time that Gerrard's been there. So I think that broadly speaking, the philosophy will be roughly the same. He'll command respect just by dint of who he is when he walks into the dressing room. Now, some guys that are maybe the younger ones will maybe think, I know his name, but I don't exactly recall him playing with Arsenal. But saying that, maybe some of the guys certainly the London guys might go, I can remember him playing with Arsenal. But his record speaks for itself. Albeit managerially, his last job in China, he didn't exactly set the header alight over there, but there's a multitude of reasons as to why that might have been the case. It's anyone moving to China, it's a massive cultural change. By all accounts, if you're a picky eater, it can be a terrible place to be in, you know, that you can't eat and stuff like that. So there could be a multitude of mitigating factors that would explain away that kind of fall off, if you like, in terms of how proficient he was and how well he was going to do. But, you know, he went to the Chinese Super League, presumably for monetary reasons, and you can't blame him. He's coming to, presumably, the Scottish Premier League to rekindle his career. He's got a reputation to partially rebuild. So you would assume that he's hungry. Who he brings in and whether he can get his message across to the players in the short to medium term to such an extent where we don't, essentially we don't fall behind Celtic. That's the big thing. Obviously the Champions League carrot is there, albeit it's not 100% certain that it's going to mean automatic qualification to the groups for the league winners. But it's looking likely that's going to be the thing. So I would say that, you know, if he comes in and there's not too much of a discrepancy in terms of the overall philosophy, and he gets players buying into it, and probably more aptly that any speculation with regards to Steven Gerrard coming in to try and take players away the January transfer window and unsettling guys, that might be, you know, that might be a stumbling block that Gio needs to, or whoever the lucky guy is, might need to overcome. So, but that's all part and parcel of management. They'll be used to that. So that's the big thing. If we can get to Christmas, New Year, and still maintaining our advantage over our chums, and hopefully in a League Cup in a League Cup final, I should say, and in Europe after Christmas in the Europa League rather than the Conference, then yeah, you know, I think it's well within Gio's compass. Put it that way.
Ross, can I come in there?
Sure.
Just to first of all thank David, because he's chilling me out. He's making me feel a lot better. I didn't realise how upset I was about this week until David started putting me right there. He's absolutely spot on about the Van Bronckhorst being Dutch. Just the simple fact of being Dutch. Is there a more technically adept nation, you know, in football? And what's happened at Barcelona, which has then led to what's happened at, you know, Manchester City. I know a lot of that's money based, but that all comes from a Dutch model. You know, it comes from Van Gaal's time at Barcelona. It goes back to Arrigo Sacchi, took it from the Dutch as well, from the total football thing, Arenas Michel. So, and David's right as well. The way we've been playing this season, it's getting a bit slower, but it's quite an expansive system. The thing for me is if Van Bronckhorst can come in there, or if he's the man that's going to take over, the players would enjoy playing that system, and that would be part of the respect. And I think having a lot of them were probably on board with a lot of the kind of loyalty this season was posited on, you know, that we might get through the Champions League qualifiers at the beginning of the season, and we need to, in light of what's happened, we need to revisit what happened there against Malmo. Is that part of Steven Gerrard wanting away? But to persuade them to stay through January, when I was talking to a Villa fan, you know, instant traitor, I was talking to a Villa fan in a pod the other day, and he was saying, notice Jack Grealish, their whole left-hand side, that they need to improve the left-hand side. And I told him about Ryan Kent, and I thought, I'm going to shut up now, because Glenn Kamara kind of goes out left. He was like an outball for Finland all through the Euros on the left of midfield. And that's before you go to Barisic or Bassi, you know, or both. So if the players will enjoy the philosophy of the new manager, then that's more likely to make them want to stay as well, you know. And I think it's, you know, as David's saying, get that League Cup one. We get that one, that just changes everything instantly. Just lets the club know, well, that's your first cup. That's the first. If we win this League Cup, it's the first time the Rangers players will have celebrated after lifting silverware with the Rangers crowd since Walter Smith at Rugby Park in 2011. Absolutely incredible moment. So it'd be more than just a League Cup. So that would just completely revolutionise the mood just now, and hopefully, I think we just need nudged over the top of the hill now. Gerrard has got us up there, and it's just, we don't want to go back. We're just wanting that wee nudge over. That's all it needs, a bit of kind of smoothness, a bit of kind of just let things carry on, maybe pick up a wee bit, and we can just head on down that hill easy into a big pile of trophies at the bottom of it, hopefully.
Well, that brings us really nicely to kind of look at where we are today as a club and as a vacancy for any potential managers, Alec. And you know, we're sitting here with a 4-point head start in the league. You're sitting there with a guaranteed cup semi-final with a squad that is more than capable of not only winning the semi, but winning the whole tournament. And you're also sitting there, there's 2 games left in Europe, but really we've got a playoff against Sparta Prague in a couple of weeks. And if we win that by 2, you're through to the last 32 of Europe for the 3rd year in a row. Given all of those different factors, this is surely a different opportunity to build the one that was on offer in 2018 when Gerrard first walked in the door. And I remember that at that time, we were struggling to really attract big names. This was off the back of Pedro. We then had Murty for a long, long time as interim manager. We had the Derek McInnes fiasco when it seemed that really we couldn't find anyone else. Murty then comes back until the end of the season. We have the Jimmy Nicol and all the rest of it before we finally got Gerrard. But fast forwarding to where we are today, given that we are champions, we have the best squad, and we're so well placed coming into the next part of the season. Just how attractive is this job for potential managerial candidates? Massively.
And I think we owe that to Steven Gerrard, if nothing else. It was a complete symbiosis, of need for Gerrard and myself when he first arrived at Rangers. That's why we went absolutely nuts. That's why there was 6,000-7,000 people in the enclosure when he get presented to the press, because we knew instantly, despite all the naysayers in the media and what have you, we knew this was it was a match made in heaven. It's a perfect meeting of 2 different desires. Gerrard wanted to get himself back to Anfield, or maybe just wanting to get a league. I think there's a kind of poetry, in the fact that he won everything at Anfield as a player spectacularly, except a league title. And at Rangers, the only thing he has won is a league title, and he won it spectacularly. It's almost, it seems like I'm trying to cover up in this. There's been a lot of jibes about 1 out of 9 this week, but when Steven Gerrard was brought in, we'd reset. That was our top flight, back in the top flight campaign starting again. That was stage 2. He's basically had to do a lot of dirty jobs, that went uncredited, taking a 4-goal swing in Old Firm games. From the last Old Firm game we played before Steven Gerrard arrived, we lost 5-0. I'll never know why Celtic stopped at 5. It could have been 10 that day. And he comes back. We've been to Bashkortostan, the Euros midweek, playing with 9 men, and we lose 1-0 at Parkhead, and we're still getting slagged. But it's like, that's a 4-goal swing. And by January, we'd beaten them, and we look at the record now. We're beating Celtic almost without even trying. We're beating Celtic without a shot on their goal. We're beating Celtic without Gerrard even in the stadium. It's just become contemptuously easy. That's been the easiest part of the last year or so. When we arrived, the first European draw, the first game he played in Europe, was against Skopje of Macedonia. And I remember, I wasn't thinking, how are we going to get on? I was thinking, Macedonia, right, that's not too much of a slagging. That's former Yugoslavia. People will know they've got good teams. That's what I was looking at the first 2 or 3 rounds, because of the trauma inflicted on us by losing to Progress Niederkorn under Kasinja in our first game back. Probably, maybe the worst European result, or the worst result at Rangers of my life. But what Gerrard did was, without winning a single game, he gave us instant profile again. He let the world know again what Rangers were all about. Everybody knows Steven Gerrard. Why is he going there? Because this club are massive. So he instantly made it more attractive, and to then win the league the way he did, and I've always maintained that our European runs are the cups. Those are the kind of fringe benefits. Those are the additions. The rest of Europe, the rest of the world doesn't give a hoot who wins the Scottish title. They only notice what they do in the kind of level playing field of European football. What the Old Firm do there. And for Steven Gerrard to take us from going out to Progress Niederkorn in the first playoff round to unbeaten in our group stage, topping the group last season, going to Benfica and being gutted that we've only drawn 3 each at Benfica, hitting the post to go from up, when it's felt like the day before we were losing, we're 2-0 up at Alloa in the Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Petrific, Tunnocks, Tea Cup, or whatever it was, and we're losing 3 goals in the last 20 minutes to get a cup we didn't even want to be in. The transformation has been absolutely massive, and I think he has made this job really attractive. And actually, you see Giovanni van Bronckhorst. There was a guy on Sky Sports News who was a so-called Dutch football expert who's talking from Utrecht Stadium last week, and he was practically, he must be an agent, he must be getting a backhander from Gio, because it was basically, come and get me. He's just saying, Van Bronckhorst wants this job, he loves Rangers, and Gio's that. There's a lot of people out there really want this job. And I think we definitely owe that to Gerrard. And it's now just up to, he's done his bit. And we just need to see that he's held the whole stadium up, he's held the whole club up, and we hope that Ross Wilson, as David's saying, and the rest of the team, it's now time for them to use the time that Gerrard bought them and show that they're ready to go. But I think Gerrard's just being at the club at all has been absolutely massive in terms of raising their profile again. And there's people are coming to us wanting this job rather than us having to go looking too hard.
Yeah, it's clear that people are very, very interested in the role, and for all the reasons that you described there, that's absolutely natural. Steven Gerrard has also shown that this is an excellent opportunity for anyone who's looking to kick on in football management. But we're in a place now where we're not needing to take a punt on an untested manager, another experiment. With the names that are being linked, whether that's Giovanni van Bronckhorst or others. These are established football managers who have track records of success. But David, let's try and put Gio to one side for a moment. Nothing has been confirmed. We know that he was interviewed. We know that the club was performing other interviews this weekend. Now, the club seem to have kind of tacitly denied interest in the likes of Frank Lampard and I think it's Kjell Knutsen over at Bodo Glimt in Norway. But maybe could you talk us through some of the other names that you're seeing linked and some potential candidates who might be attractive to us as a fan base?
Whoa, putting me in the spot here, Ross. Names that spring to mind, obviously Derek McInnes has been mentioned. I don't think Derek will be there. I could be wrong. I can't see it. I certainly don't see him being offered the manager's job. I think Derek would possibly be one of the last fallback positions. You've mentioned Frank. You've mentioned the fella Knutsen in Norway. Frank Lampard seems to have garnered a reputation as being tactically inept in many corners of football for whatever reason. I don't necessarily buy into that wholesale. I think Ronald Koeman's been mentioned as well. I don't know if that's just hearsay. I'm not a betting man, Ross, so I'm not scouring, odds, every 60 seconds on my phone. So other candidates, other than people like Russell Martin that have been mentioned, there's very few names that actually spring out. I think that's one of the refreshing things about this is that it's not a scattergun recruitment process, which has had to be the case in the past. As you guys have rightly alluded to, that it's been incumbent on us to try and sell ourselves, whereas the task is getting someone in the building, whether it be a hotel in London or wherever they choose to meet. Now the playing squad, the standards of excellence at the training ground and the stadium, those have come back. The standards that the Rangers were always famous for during their history have returned. So the club, in many respects, as a footballing entity, as opposed to a team play or a club playing in a league, sells itself. They've got a massive support. They've got a sizable budget. It's not commensurate with a lot of English Premier League teams, but the status of the club surely offsets that. We do, as Alex spoke about at length, we have an attractive squad that any manager and an experienced and proven manager would presumably want to work with. As far as other candidates, I think it's going to be quite a small short league. I don't see the net being cast wide. I don't see any crazy names like Rino Gattuso really making the cut. He'd be box office, Reno, judging by some of his press conferences when he's speaking in English. So I think that the short lead will be possibly three men, and I think it's a question of which personalities fit with the executive team, the synergy and the kind of just the general feeling that possible relationship could garner, and the obvious thing, backroom staff. I would very much doubt that the club would be willing to engage with such a large backroom staff as Steven Gerrard brought to the club, out of necessity in many respects, but would be keen to avoid that wholesale backroom staff moving on again. I think they now that the building blocks for continuity and establishing a Rangers identity as a club, a playing style, a philosophy, what have you, those building blocks have been laid down. Steven Gerrard is with the absolute help of the board, I might add, backing of the board, because the board, after a couple of wobbles, could have quite said to Stevie, look, Stevie, we appreciate what you've done, but it's not really working out the way we thought it would. And they could have dispensed with these services. But they stuck with him, and they backed the guy up to a point, up to what the kind of fiscal reality of the club would determine, certainly from an outsider looking in. So all those things work in our favour, and I think that they want to maintain that continuity and they want to add to it. So getting the backroom team right, whether that necessitates Scottish representation from the point of view of succession planning, fine. I'm sure that Ross Wilson and whoever the lucky man may be will get the right mix. Put it this way, if it doesn't come off, I'm sure we'll find it in the short term. I'm sure we'll find it pretty quickly. And this is not the greatest season given what's at stake in terms of the Champions League group. Money's available. But, sometimes when the tough gets going, the going gets tough. When the going gets tough, the tough get going, I should say. And I think we'll step up to the plate. I think we've been over some hurdles in the past, and I think that the previous 2 years before Stevie came in, and possibly the first 18 months to 2 years, I think enough experience of the footballing business has been garnered by certain board members, and they've obviously got an experienced sporting director in, whereby we can take this, relatively speaking, in our stride, if that makes sense.
It certainly does. Alec, looking at the betting odds here, we've got a list of say 10 names, and I think we've probably touched on most of them. Obviously, Giovanni van Bronckhorst is far and away the favourite with the bookies at the moment, but names like Frank Lampard, like Gattuso, like Knutson, the club, like I say, have kind of fed out some messages. It seems that so and so won't be interviewed, or that it's not going to be Gattuso, was being reported by Sky earlier, or that it wouldn't be Knutson. I think it's patently obvious that it will not be Derek McInnes. I don't think any of us expect that would actually happen as the number one manager. The list of names that we have there's names like Shota Arveladze, for example. Sounds like he's probably off to Hull to fill the vacancy there. Leads us to believe that actually if there's more interviews taking place this weekend, it could be what's being termed a left field appointment, i.e. a name that maybe we're not quite thinking of or that we may not have heard of yet. Now, after what happened with Caixinha, which was inarguably a left field appointment, does the Rangers fan base have the bravery or the patience to accept a left field appointment, or does this one have to be a name that we know, that we recognise, and that we understand?
Yeah, I think it does. I think we do need. I think we do need to recognise the player and the personality coming in. A left field appointment could work. It could get. And I think Knutson's about as left field as I want to get. If you like, from those names you've been mentioning, I think I would actually looking for somebody who's a combination of I would want Frank Lampard and Knutson, who we could probably afford neither of them. I would want both of them, because Knutson is that. It's a really, it's a kind of almost a Jim McLean type scenario there. He's up in the north in Norway. It's Bodo Glimt. He's been there for a few years. He's 53, I think, 53 years old. He's won that team their only ever Norwegian league title, and he's thumping Roma 6-1 in the Conference League. And I'm actually more impressed with the fact that they went to Rome and got they were like 7 minutes away from winning over there as well. I really kind of, just the ball was just over the line for the Roma equaliser, which they were really glad of. And they're unbeaten. They're top in the Conference League group. Siska and Zoya Luhansk, but it seems like I kind of specialised. I've got this whole club to myself. It's a very small club. I think the ground holds maybe like 5,000 to 7,000 or something like that. That it doesn't mean to say the guy can't do it at Rangers, but you think it's a different scenario altogether. But he's obviously got tactical know-how, and they play bloody lovely football, by the way, from what I've seen of them. That some of the goals are smashing. But that's the one I would feel you would then need a Lampard or somebody to come in there, and be the personality, be the force that's telling the Rangers players, no, you've got to listen to this guy, even though he doesn't. And that's Lampard has no working relationship with this fella whatsoever. That's a total fantasy. But I think for me that's the only way it would work. I think like Derek McInnes, I think a lot of Rangers fans would be insulted, if McInnes got the job, but he does keep getting mentioned, as David says. I think that's just through a sheer lack of imagination on the part of the media, as much as anything else. It would be, I think it's moved beyond him at this point. I was worried about that because he seems to be, he's not been taking any other jobs, he's just been doing media. I was a bit worried that Derek was just waiting for Gerrard to leave because he'd had the nod or something. He had an inkling that he might get in there. But I think we need someone, it's not so much just to steady the ship as to just keep it moving forward as well, though. And I think to get the fans on board straight away as well, you need a bit of a name, I think, and Van Bronckhorst does fit the bill. I say, again, it's difficult because I'm not coming up with an answer. I can't think of who, because I know money's not, that's an obstacle to who we're going to get. But Van Bronckhorst seems like a sensible decision. It's not. I'm not as enthused as maybe other people are by it. I think there's a kind of caution with it. It comes with it as well as an appointment. But it seems like he ticks basically as many boxes you can think of. So he's the man. And I think, as David's been saying, Ross Wilson will have worked on this. They will have, he's got to have this down to a fine art. You've got to have a list that's ready to go at all times, which he keeps altering as players, as these various managerial candidates are getting jobs. Well, Steven Gerrard's still in our job, but I think this is his speciality. This is where he comes. He's got to step up and play now, and I think we're actually looking for an appointment by close of play tomorrow. I think that's really what we're looking at. We're going to be disappointed if we don't get one. And for me, Van Bronckhorst seems to be the kind of best option right now, and we're not in the mood for another Caixinha. We can't be doing that. I don't think. I just don't think we can chance it, because the one thing that Gerrard's appointment and the success of it made clear was that you need a guy who is almost more demanding than the Rangers support. No, we infamously had Mark Warburton trying to tell us that you just get liquidated a few years ago. You shouldn't be wanting to beat Hearts at Tynecastle and stuff like that. You shouldn't be thinking, no, but Rangers will only work through the league. When Steven Gerrard came in, the first thing he did was he stopped us finishing third, which no Rangers manager will ever get praise for. And in the following season, he put a gap between us in second and the Aberdeens and the Hibs. Which again, that was needing to be done when you're rebuilding, as we still are from 2012. These things need to be done and need to be done at a pace that allows it to, we learn from it, and it's building for the future as much as anything else. And that's what he was doing. And I think it was his force of personality that helped him do that. His ambition helped him do that. I'm talking about the past tense now as if he's dead, because when you leave Rangers, you kind of are. But I think we need somebody who's got that force of nature, that force of personality, who's kind of, do you remember the old cliche Alec Ferguson talking about when Eric Cantona arrived at Old Trafford? And it was like, I wasn't asking Cantona if he was good enough to play for Manchester United. Cantona was looking about Old Trafford saying, is this club good enough for me? And I think you need a bit of that for anybody who's going to take the Rangers job. And from what I've seen, it's really only Van Bronckhorst is the only kind of candidate I think fits the bill.
Well, he's certainly the candidate that's generated the most buzz, and it seems the most likely, certainly at this point. David, Alec mentioned there that things seem to be moving and that we might be disappointed if we don't have an announcement by close of play tomorrow. Now, what makes me nervous here is that this board at Rangers has history for getting managerial appointments wrong and for taking their time and getting it wrong. We remember how long it took to replace Caixinha, and our season was catastrophic for that reason. So how much time do they have to play with here? We have a crucial couple of weeks for the remainder of our season in terms of cup semi-finals in Europe. At what point would you be disappointed if we haven't had an announcement, if we haven't had something coming out of the club? Have they got until sort of midweek, let's say, because they certainly need to have someone in the dugout for Sunday at Hampden?
I echo Alec's sentiments. I would be surprised if someone wasn't unveiled tomorrow. I think if we're looking to get someone in with a view to, giving ourselves the best chance of not slipping up against Hibs, if maybe a couple of players' eyes are off the ball, and I don't know what the story is with regards to injuries and suspensions, because obviously we've got to wait for players coming back from international duty. I would think that the cut-off time would be close of play Tuesday. I think that would give the manager or the new incumbent 3 days, 4 days to work with, probably 3 days in all likelihood, to work with the team and get some basic stuff across as to how he wants to play. Going forward, and I'll upset a lot of people here by saying this, I would rather they got the appointment correct. If for whatever reason they have second thoughts about appointing Giovanni van Bronckhorst, Frank Lampard, Frank de Boer, Ronald Koeman, Shota Arveladze, Rino Gattuso, whoever it might be, if it's someone from, the A-League or the J-League, one of Angie's former jousting partners in Japan. If it's someone like that, then I would rather they took their time and got it right. It's this season we're at a crucial juncture. If things were to go seriously awry, and for some crazy reason that Ange Ball didn't end up in the slates at the end of the season, and they actually managed to win the league, we'd effectively be back to square one. And that's something that's there's a pressure that comes with that. Giovanni van Bronckhorst, given that he's been here before, will be fully aware of the absolute imperative need to beat Celtic. So that obviously has him as the forerunner for obvious reasons. Then you could say, well, I'll use bad language again here, possibly. Derek McInnes would be in a similar boat. He knows all too well how important it is to beat Celtic. Frank de Boer would know how important it is to beat Celtic, were it to be something like that. If it was someone like, I'll just use Ronald Koeman as an example here, that's someone that's maybe not got direct experience of Scotland, maybe hasn't played for a side that's played Rangers in Europe and during their playing career, maybe with the best will in the world could be fully cognizant of the size of the club, but they don't really know what's required. That's how, I've been saying to people all this week that only a Scot would truly covet the Rangers job. A foreigner, and I include Englishmen in this, whilst they would have the savvy to recognise the size of the operation, but they truly don't know what it means to us three, in the hundreds, hopefully thousands of guys that are tuning into this. So, if you get it right, to get back to the point, I'm comfortable with them taking possibly another week. I think there's enough in the tank. I think if Jermaine Defoe or whoever, if it's David McCallum or whoever takes the team, but it could be Stephen Davis, Niall McGregor and Scotty Arfield just sitting everybody down going, look, we need to get through this semis, lad. And they surely have enough experience in the tank to say, right, we know what to do. We've listened to Mick telling us, what to do for 3 years. We know how to play. We just drive and hunger to get to the final should possibly see us through. Fingers crossed. I'm not taking Hibs lightly because I'll be up for it. But if that means... Sorry?
No, carry on.
If that means that we spend another week, getting a backroom team assembled, then fine. But it can't go 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and the number of days that had elapsed before they managed to, number one, appoint Pedro Caixinha, and number two, the length of time that it took between Pedro's dismissal and appointing Stevie. So that kind of going. But the clubs, as Alec quite neatly put earlier on, the clubs they're two different Rangers between that time and this time. So we have everything going for us, whereas, we were back then, we were trying to be persuasive, and it took, an executive decision, shall we say, to push things forward with regards to Gerrard's appointment. I don't think we're encumbered by that need this time, so that gives us a bit of room in terms of getting the appointment right. But as you guys know all too well, the longer it drags on, the more questions get asked to the board about whether they're procrastinating, whether they've got the necessary budget to entice the right guy. All that stuff comes more to the fore. So it's just a case of, hopefully getting the right fit, the right person being available, hopefully no compensation involved, and we get somebody in the door this week.
Well, it certainly looks that will be the case. Like I say, Rangers board have wasted no time in sort of trying to move to secure their targets. Gerrard, I think, was formally announced as Villa manager around about 11 o'clock on Thursday morning, and within 48 hours, we have the two directors from Rangers flying down to London. We have Giovanni van Bronckhorst flying into London from Amsterdam for an interview. So they're certainly moving at pace, and the appetite certainly seems to be there. You'd think that if there's no appointment made or no announcement made by, say, Tuesday or Wednesday, then something... You're right, David. The question is starts to be asked is, has something gone wrong? And I think that's what the club can't afford right now is for uncertainty to creep into this and questions to be asked. The players have a monumental couple of weeks coming up. Gerrard leaves a legacy of success. Naturally, he's the guy who brought 55. He's the guy who restored us in Europe. But he also has the other side of his legacy, which is the failure to win cups. That's something that Rangers can almost immediately put right without Gerrard. And this coming week is massive for that. So this is not a week where we can have doubts and questions of the off-field stuff starting to creep in. We need to be absolutely ready for Hibs, because Hibs will try and take advantage of this next week, and there'll be a lot of talk about the cup final of 2016 and trying to unsettle the squad. So it's a really important couple of weeks, and I know that the board will know that and will be keen to move so quickly to get this wrapped up, whether it's Gio or whether it's someone else. All signs pointing to Gio at this point. Would be really, really keen to hear what everyone thinks of that. So please do leave us your thoughts on whether it should be Gio, whether it should be Lampard, Gattuso, Alex, Neil. Even if you're somehow on the Derek McInnes boat, then that's your prerogative. But we'll be really, really keen to hear why that would be the case. That takes us to the top of the hour. So I think what we'll do is we will leave it there and try and get a good night's sleep for what could be a very, very interesting couple of days. Thank you so much, of course, to Alex and to David for joining us this evening. And a massive thank you to everyone who's joined us on YouTube tonight. Some fantastic numbers of people watching. So a really big thank you for giving up your Sunday evening to join us this evening. As I say, the show is always available for download on a Monday morning. Please do like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from, and we will look forward to hearing from you in the very near future. The show will, of course, be back next Sunday, when I am confident that we'll be talking about our first result under the new management team. And so we'll really, really look forward to that one. Please do join us for that. That's next Sunday, the 21st of November, 9:30 on the Gersnet YouTube channel. Otherwise, please do keep in touch via social media. Please do head over to the website at www.gersnet.co.uk. It's going to be a really fascinating week for all of us in the Rangers family. So enjoy, and we will see you next week. Goodbye for now.